Welcome to this slightly altered evening meeting for OREF for January. Thanks indeed to Mike for getting all the technical wizardry all sorted out, but it was also the fact that Mike was going to have to haul over from Dearness with camera kit, and the chances of him getting stranded if it goes all icy and snowy, we thought, you know what, this is a bit silly, and we want to drag him and Angus out. So thank you for being able to drop onto Teams. So this evening, I'm really pleased that we've got an opportunity to have a chat about what's going on with this ICNZ project. So iCAN is going to have Mark and Becky speaking about it, and this is really about a whole process about iCAN being set up to facilitate knowledge sharing and peer support between community organisations across the three areas in the Islands deal. So it's led by Community Energy Scotland, and it really is about tapping into the knowledge and experience that exists within the Isles to find a way to tackle some of the challenges we've got. I'm not going to say much more at this point, but I'm going to hand over to Mark, who I think is going to intro things or compare, and I will keep people in order should the need arise, and we'll take questions at the end if that's all right. Okay, Mark.
Cheers, Neil. You can hear me okay? Yeah. Yeah, cool. Yeah, no, I am literally just the warm-up act for Becky. And looking at the audience here, most of people know all the information in the first slides. I do the sort of general introduction, and most folk here will know it, but we'll go through them anyway. But we'll both be here for questions and discussion as we go through. So I should now be sharing, hopefully.
Yeah.
You can see that fine. Cool. Yeah, so as Neil said, yeah, so it's really just an introduction to the iCAN, the Islands Community Action Network, which Becky very much leads on practical delivery of and things like that. And I just give oversight and support. So yeah, for those, just the usual promo. Community Energy Scotland, in case anyone's forgotten, Scottish charity since 2008, over 500 community group members. If you're a community group and Orkney and you're not a member, be a member, become a member. You've got no excuse, it's free, so it's complete value for money. But sometimes people forget and they don't realize you've had a conversation over a decade with someone and you think they're a member, and then they say, "Oh, you're actually a member," and they go, "No, it's free and it entitles you to actual discount rates when we actually go and bid for bits of work and stuff like that. You actually get it cheaper to be a member." So I'm doing a bit of promo, but that's great. But we support a lot of projects over Scotland over time, and we're now crept back up again to about 30 staff based across Scotland, and 7 of those are in Orkney at the moment. So it's still a significant presence in Orkney. Yeah, we work with communities and our partners to support, promote, and represent community energy sector. We do this by providing technical assistance, knowledge sharing, and supporting and championing the role of community-led action for better resilience now and as part of a good transition to a low-carbon future. Very relevant for tonight. We are one of the partners and are lucky to be part of the Island Centre for Net Zero. We haven't got the background really on here for the point of view that it's a national funded pot. It's like the city deal for the islands between Orkney, Shetland and the Western Isles. ICNZ are getting 16.5 million of that over a 10-year programme, most of it in the first 5 years. For that point of view, we're meant to be covering, let's say, the 48 populated islands across the 3 island groups, the 7 main project partners, and we've got targets of net zero outcomes by 2030 across that. And these are the main bullet points. I think Matthew's on here, so I better get them right as well. So the bullet points for ICNZ is to support the islands to reach net zero emissions, support job creation in green industries in the islands, support supply chain development locally, support net zero ambitions across the islands deal, and develop an international reputation for the island. It's seen as a strategic investment across our islands to build a good future that we all want to live in. So it's one that we're active, we're living, we're enterprising in as well at the same time as making it net zero. So I say the main partners are Shetland Islands Council, Orkney Islands Council, Western Isles Council, not good at Gaelic, CES, Aquaterra, Heriot Watt and EMEC. And these partners were picked and formed a consortium because they bring together technical, environmental, academic, government, commercial and community expertise. There's a lovely diagram that's sort of distilled over the years about what we are doing and the different parts of it. I think the key bit's the bit on the left there, with this idea of the ICN toolbox. it was saying, how do we provide tools to help all of our community, all of our sectors, and all our actors be able to decarbonize? ICNZ isn't there to do it. It's there to actually support and give the tools for others to be able to do it and recognize the natural, either innate or active resource and ability we've got across all our communities to do this. So we split it into sort of 4 areas. We've got the solutions that aren't yet known, and the transition lab, the academics really look at that. We have activity to do test and demo zones, where the solutions are partly known and need developed, need a demonstration will be seen. Particularly, we lead on the community networks, which are the solutions on the whole that are known but need action. And then we have almost like a business development for the islands, for the different sectors, this island accelerator that's looking to bring in wider resources. Because it sounds a big pot, but when you think 3 island groups, 10 years, loads and loads of activities, it's really, really thinly funded. And we have to use every penny we can to try and bring in extra money and multipliers to make the most of that, to support it. But the principle of all that is to create activity, to create carbon downshift projects, activities across the 3 island groups, which will take us towards net zero. And for us tonight, in particular, the iCAN is a catchy name for what the community networks part became, and it stands for the Islands Community Action Network, of which Becky is the iCan-do officer, which is a great acronym for that, and she'll come onto that more in more detail. So what it is. But I just want to say, I can't see the top of my screen, but I would say for the climate crisis, some of you may have seen this slide. I've used it in a different context, but I think it's just really important when we're reflecting today. I was going to put out there, the climate crisis, I would say it's not electron, it's not carbon. I'd even say it's not climatic changes, the challenge. That's not our current problem. We're frozen in a heat wave, is the way I describe it. We're not acting when we know something's going on. We are in an emergency. That was when I did this one, those huge forest fires in Australia. They'll be coming around again this year, and that was an example of it there. We know it's really, we're really aware. We can't deny it now. We're absolutely in an emergency. We know it. And if we're honest, we've known about it for a long while. That is ExxonMobil's prediction in 1970, what was going to happen as far as temperature change. They almost got it spot on in 1970, 55 years ago. And the people, arguably the people are causing it, we know this. We've known the problem and we've known most of the solutions. We have personal and cultural memory of living before oil. Again, it's a slight cheat, but that's on the right-hand side. What you have there is global energy consumption for fossil fuel. And we see in 1950, there's a really hockey stick. If that's in lived memory of a vast majority, well, not a vast majority, it's in memory of either yourself or people that you've grown up with, and people around you. So much of that, we think of it as being much longer ago than that. The real imbalance has been over quite a short period. And most people want to do the right thing if they can, but we don't act. And we've spent a lot of time, we do accept that global and social justice and inclusion are the key. I'm not dodging that. There's a really big picture out there. But we ourselves, we live within our own environment, with our own communities and our own worlds. And what we seem to be doing and what we're saying is it's part of the reason we're frozen, that we're not also seeing and having trust in what we can do locally, the path to action. And I think where we are in Orkney, in the Western world, is a privileged position, but it's also a position that gives us a lot of ability. The lot of what we can do is in our hands, and it can really make a difference. So some of the idea under the ICNZ was iCAN is there, it helps to deliver this part of unfreezing citizens, unfreezing organizations and enterprises through community collective resources. I have this slide from another one where we're talking about community action. We've seen community action for energy. We've seen how that relies on a sense of place. There's a very famous person in our sector who still works quite heavily in community development and community action, Alistair McIntosh, and he took from the Highlands this idea of animals being hefted, but in the same way, citizens and individuals and families, not even directly linked to working the land, but you're hefted within your community, you know your community, and you have intelligence like no one else of your own circumstance. And there's also, I've got a student at the moment who's very passionate about this Gaelic concept of duchas, which is a connectedness and interrelationship between land, people and culture. But it does matter, and it does bring something that we take for granted, but it's a real strength when we're facing what we're facing. I hate the word glocal. But I really think for islanders, and this is very much an island-specific initiative, it really sums up this idea that we're travelers. We know where our feet are, but we see a horizon, that blend of global and local. And we do have that perspective. And it's important to avoid the traps of just glossing over and saying everything's rosy and having rose-tinted thinking. But with the knowledge, ownership, and relationship of place that we have is a real asset and the strength that we all have in Orkney across our island. And I think that's really what we want to help unlock and help support take action. Because another slide with this, which came from a lot of the work that came out of community action through development in energy projects, but also community building their own resilience, is we had this idea, we talk about island communities are sometimes the world writ small. A few folk would have seen this slide. And we're seen as remote locations, and we're often first to experience challenges we all face. But those islanded systems create specific challenges for resilience and to mitigate them because we're quite vulnerable. The sense of identity and traditional self-reliance increases citizen action. And we say we're not living laboratory, but the scale and discrete nature of our communities allow demonstration, pathfinding, and this shining light for us all. And I really think we can really show the way. So we have this concept of us being lighthouse communities. It's this idea, the troubles are going to hit us first, but we can also then show the way, and we show the path to safety for other folk. And these are quite sort of broad concepts, but I think they do matter. And for us to realize it lets people have a sense that we have a role, we have agency, we have an ability to do something and to make change. And that's really where the end of my stuff waffling is, isn't it, Becky? Because Becky's going to get more down to the nitty gritty. You're certainly going to start talking about communities, but I'm going to be her unglamorous assistant and click the button as she goes. So anyway, go for it, Becky.
Thanks, Mark. So having kind of set the scene for where we are, I think as islanders, we all kind of know what we're experiencing, that we're already experiencing the sharp end of the eco-social crisis. We've seen market failure in electricity with the energy crisis and the cost of living crisis. We all know what the issues are around transport, housing, the question mark about what is or isn't sustainable in terms of tourism. We all, as islanders, are experiencing aging populations, a demographic shift, which is bringing with it a care crisis. And we're already experiencing the effects of climate change on a very real level. In some islands, we're looking at already experiencing sea level rises and flooding and coastal erosion. And that's something that's happening now. It's not something that's going to happen. It's already happening. Community, anybody who's ever heard me talk before has heard me talk about community as a process. Community is a word that's used every day, multiple times in multiple different contexts, and it's often used as a noun. We talk about community benefit, we talk about the community, we talk about community engagement, but we never actually stop to ask what we mean when we use the word community and what's included, who's included and who's not included. I'd like to try and challenge that and say that community is a process, and it's about an understanding of and care for and commitment to people and place. It involves expertise in the complexity of local context. People understand the places and the people that they live with. At its best, it recognizes interdependency, that the fact that we need each other. You might not like everybody you live amongst. Community is not a group hug for people. When you go and talk about community in places outside of island communities or outside of small communities, there's a sense, community is this lovely, warm thing. It's not. But what it is, and there's a lovely line in Laura Watt's book where she says, in Orkney, it's not so much that the hatchet is buried, but that it's kept strategically out of sight under the table. It's about that understanding that even when we don't get on, even when we have differences and disagreements, that we need each other. And that we have the ability to work together across that. And because of that, we can build relationships of commitment and trust. We work together over a period of time. We build those relationships. We understand each other, and we can trust that we can get things done. And at its best, as Community Energy Scotland has experienced, we can have shared ownerships of assets which allow collective benefit, and they give the communities who have those assets agency and the ability to respond, responsibility, that ability to respond when things change. Overall, I would argue that community as a process is a powerful tool for decarbonising ways of living on a changing planet. And that's what we hope to try and facilitate and harness in the work we're doing with iCAN. I'd also argue that community is a decarbonisation technology. So where you have care for people in place, not as assets or resources to exploit, but as intrinsically valuable ecosystems which can sustain life for all. It also allows climate action beyond net zero. It's about sustainable, resilient futures shaped by equity, fairness, inclusion, and care. It allows community-led development where you have place-based solutions which are context-specific and again, provide agency and responsibility through building local capacity and these trusted relationships. And again, community energy, which allows collective ownership of the resource, the agency to organise and act, local knowledge and expertise, shared learning, and mutually beneficial collaboration with others. It's not saying that communities can do everything themselves, but when we work together and when we look out, we can then have mutually beneficial collaboration rather than extraction and exploitation. So what is the Island Community Action Network? It's about linking about linking community organisations across the 3 island groups. So we're looking to create this network of community organisations. We're facilitating knowledge exchange and sharing of experience between the island communities. We are building a toolkit of information and resources to support practical action, and we're co-producing this with members of the network. We're also setting up a network of community resource centres across the network, which will provide access to the network, access to the tools and resources, and act as a focus for community action, for getting collective action and supporting activities within communities. And it's also about making sure that community voices are at the heart of ICNZ and that those community perspectives are feeding back into the other project partners within ICNZ, and that it's a dialogue between the two. Just to give you a sense of where the different members are, we've got our furthest north are up in North Yell, and our further south are down in Barra. And there's a good spread across Orkney, Shetland, and the Outer Hebrides. I think we're up to about 46 individual organisations who are members now, and always open for more. So in terms of knowledge sharing and support, we're doing that through monthly meetings across the network. We have those online the first Wednesday of the month. We have theme presentations and discussions, updates on what's happening within the wider ICNZ project, and feedback from network members. It's really a chance for network members to interact with each other, to hear about projects that they're working on, to ask questions, to discuss things. And it's been a really, so far, it's been a really kind of lively space for people to interact and get to know each other. We're also working with the ICNZ Accelerator Communities Officer, who's Kat McGinley, who's also based at Community Energy Scotland. And her role is to identify opportunities to support communities in locating and applying for funding, and also where they may have project ideas which could feed in and be part of collaborations more widely within ICNZ with the other partners. We're currently working on creating an online space as an extension of the network into a virtual space, and the idea of that will allow iCAN members to communicate directly with each other, to have a discussion forum, to share documents, to have requests for information, and sharing news and links to resources, and having themed subgroups where you might have different organisations working on similar activities, and they want to get together and share their experiences and support each other through the process. And so the community resource centres, we've got 10 at the moment, coming by the end of this month. The furthest north again is up in North Yell, and the further south in Barra. They are receiving computer equipment and video conferencing equipment. We've got I don't know what we call them, a fleet of owls, a flock of owls, which are these
Parliament, surely.
A parliament of owls. We've got the video conferencing camera and audio 360, which allows much more interactive and kind of intuitive online experience to help to facilitate the interaction across the meetings and for hopefully hybrid events once the community resource centres get up and running. So yes, so facilitating online network meetings and events. It'll allow access to the digital toolkit and a range of physical materials as well to support that. And then phase one, as I say, is a total of 10 community resource centres hosted by the organisations. You can just click through them, Mark. So in Shetland, we've got the North Yell Development Company, Bressa Development Limited, the Hossick Visitor Centre and Cafe in Sandwick in Shetland, and the Living Well hubs. And then in Orkney, we've got Sandy Development Trust, Shappensea Development Trust, Browsley, Egglesey and Wyre Development Trust, and the Orkney Library and Archive. And then in the Outer Hebrides, we've got UCVO, the US Council of Voluntary Organisations, and Barra Learning Centre, which is part of UHI. And then the iCAN toolkit is the other thing we're working on at the moment, which is going to be a range of tools, digital tools to support practical decarbonisation action based on what communities are interested in and what they need. And we've had a member survey where we asked questions about what kind of things, activities groups are already working on, and where they felt that they would welcome additional support and information. The key is about having clear, trusted information. So we've got a decarbonisation reference guide laying out key terms and basic information in accessible language. And this is so that to support the work that organisations are doing within their own communities, so they can use it as a resource for communicating more widely within their own community. Then with the other decarbonisation tools will be around practical action. So things that can be used to support practical action, whether that's looking at how to write a community climate action plan, how-to guides on things like waste and reuse, community growing, mending, seed saving, all sorts of things that communities are already doing, and capturing that and sharing that in a format that's really easy to and accessible to use. We're also working on case studies across the network with member organisations, showing examples of real life applications of this knowledge and this experience, and helping to facilitate knowledge sharing events across the network, and also capturing how we're doing things. So we're developing an iCAN manual to share our values and the processes so that this can be shared with other communities more widely, because that is one of the strands of ICNZ, is about showing how the islands can act as lighthouse communities for other places. And this will just give you, this is taken from the member survey that we did, just to give you a sense of what's already being done across the network. So lots of activity around waste and recycling. That's something that's come out very strongly as something that, as particularly in the smaller islands, is a real challenge, where they're really keen to find ways of dealing with waste locally and saving things from being waste. Lots of the organisations are running good as new shops or repair cafes, that kind of thing. So it's a really important strand. Also community transport, real interest in food and local growing, developing community fridges, and lots of the members are already involved in renewable energy generation as well. And then the next slide just shows where there's areas of interest. So interestingly, there's a match. There's a kind of match between where people are active and where people are interested. So this is really encouraging, because it shows that for the members who have an interest in something and would like to learn more, there are communities out there already doing that. And our hope is to develop that sharing of lived experience, so that the communities who are just starting out on their journey and developing some of these activities have a lived example that they can ask people for advice and learn from them. Okay, Mark, next slide.
Right.
And that's just, we're always looking for new members. So if you are part of an organisation in Orkney or Shetland or the Outer Hebrides and interested in decarbonisation, come and join us, because the more the merrier. And I think that's it.
It's a bit rapid, I think, but never mind. I should have clicked slower, Becky, I think.
That's okay. People can ask questions.
So, Chairman's role. So, any questions for Becky or Mark on anything we've heard about tonight? 'Cause it sounds really exciting, and I think it's an excellent idea to generate this empowerment, because it's obviously not going to be fixed from the centre outwards. It's going to be fixed from the edges, and just really encouraging to see that there's been the recognition of the power of people to actually do stuff. So, anybody want to come in on anything particular as a starting point? I had one that I was just curious about. Becky, you said that the events are on the first Wednesday of the month. Is that in the evening time, or is that during the day? And how do people find out about it?
So for the organisations, once they've joined as a member, they're on a mailing list, and I send out an invitation every month, and discuss, tell folk what we're going to be discussing, and the link then is sent out. So we keep all the members get regular updates to come to the meeting. It's at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, because most folk are organisations, so it's within working hours, I'm afraid.
That's fine. That's good. Martin had his hand up first, and then Ian after that. Martin, go ahead, and then Hayley.
I noticed that you were looking at.
Martin, your audio's terrible.
Hello, is it any better?
Getting there.
Try again. Is that any better again?
Getting better.
Right. Well, I'll just have to shout up because I can't do anything else. I noticed that one of the things you were looking at is the land change use, and I noticed from reading the Shetland Times that most people in Shetland are absolutely in denial about the bad state of the peat in Shetland. They think it's all pristine peat. Have you made any progress in that area in persuading people that need to sort out peat?
Mark, do you want to? I don't know if you've had more
then,
experience. Yeah.
Not, I mean, we're very conscious of being recorded at this point, Martin. I think not under ICNZ. I think the Carbon Neutral Islands initiative was very interesting, where ourselves and other colleagues worked and did a sort of baseline assessment of the islands, and those islands were one in Shetland, one in the Inner Hebrides, and one in the Outer Hebrides, which I think they really felt, oh, we're sorted. We've got all this lovely peat. We're going to have a positive balance and all the rest. But it was very sobering and eye-opening to see, and how little is it's quite a small amount of any peat that is basically being a net sink as we're faced with at the moment. So when they were doing that, when they were coming through, they're ahead of a lot of the other islands in this initiative, because they had to work through. They came up with a decarbonisation action plan, and they were supported by information from ourselves, Aquaterra and other partners, and some land use and carbon specialists as well. And they had to come up with a plan to try and address it. Yeah, it was really interesting. I think Shetland Islands Council, that's why I'm very nervous. Well, I'm careful what I say. I think they were very surprised when they got their regional audit done 2 or 3 years ago. That maybe Hayley's question maybe something to do with that. But again, I think it was really quite surprising. We take for granted that peat is actually going to be an asset, but often it isn't. yeah, that's probably the best I can say at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Martin. Okay. Ian next, Hayley, and then Matthew.
Yeah, just that. Thanks very much, both Mark and Becky. Just a question on your last comment there, Becky. You know, more the merrier. Please get involved. I appreciate that, but I just wonder. Obviously, across the 3 islands, there is probably literally thousands of organisations, and I wonder if you've thought how that. You talk about the hubs and how the hubs might relate to a number of organizations within the. Is that the proposal? Because if you ended up as this developed with, potentially a number of hundreds of organizations, maybe not quite 1,000, but you might possibly end up with a lot, and that's quite a lot to manage. And I just wondered if we've thought that through. Or...
You or me, Becky?
You go, Mark, and then I can.
Okay, yeah. I think key. There's 2 different things here, Ian. That we have the CRCs, which we went for CRCs as community resource centres because everything was being called a hub for a period of about 2 or 3 years. Everything was being called a hub. We wanted to say, well, what does it mean? So the community resource centres are a specific thing where a community organisation that tends to have their own facility has an opportunity for people to gather and meet and do events and things like that. And the CRCs across the islands, there's a limited number. There's meant to be a limited number. They're specifically supported, and that's one mode of action that we're doing under ICNZ, and that's about reaching out into their communities. And that's quite different from the network and the online network, where it is open to many. If we get thousands, I'll be delighted but amazed. But I think if it gets to that scale, we'd have to look at how we're doing it. But I think you can have larger numbers with the online forum, the online meetings, and a lot of the infrastructure we're setting up and is a space where they can interact, and it can be hundreds. But I think it's a very different approach from the CRCs and a very different target to what we're trying to do with that. Is my comment. Anything else from you, Becky? No.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the CRCs recognise as well that it's about they're hosted by anchor organisations in particular communities, but the idea is that they're available to other organisations in that area. So it's not that every organisation becomes a community resource centre, but that within regions, those are available to organisations who want to use them.
Yeah, and they are, though it is well, the people that we want here, there's a bit of a beauty pageant when we ask for them and we go through, but we are selecting on geographical spread, sectorial spread, and activity spread. We're trying to make sure we got was representative to reach all parts of the 3 regions with the ones that are part of the network. And this is the first wave. We have effectively one large more wave to come. It was going to be 3, but we got quite a lot of. We were only meant to do 4 to begin with.
Yeah.
But Becky's enthusiasm and the community's enthusiasm and some clever budgetary. How do I put it? Yeah, work has meant we're getting 10 in to begin with, which is really good rather than the 4. I think.
Excellent, thanks.
Thanks, Ian. I'll go to Hayley. Martin, your hand is still up. I don't know if there's a second question you want to bring in, but I'll bring you in after Mike if you do. Hayley, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah,
great, good. Thanks, Becky and Mark, for the presentation. It's really interesting. I guess I've got a question which is a little bit associated with my work. And for folk that don't know, I work at the council, and part of my responsibility is waste management there. I oversee that. Amongst other stuff, but one of the things that you said, Becky, when you were talking about, the sort of the small actions that we can take, and I really like that we've gone from, like saving seeds to sort of energy projects. I think it's really important that we have a mix of actions. I was really, really pleased that one of the example that you gave really was not specifically around recycling, but was more around reuse and reduce. And I think it's really important, again, like I said, partly with my work head on, but also sort of as an individual. I think we've done such a brilliant job with kids, particularly around recycling, that it almost comes back to bite us a little bit sometimes. And sometimes when we've been doing a bit of work, particularly in the island context, so not as in Orkney mainland, but as in, Island Sandy, for example, is a really good one, or Westray, we'll get the kids in school wanting to do lots of stuff about recycling, say, for example, plastic bottles. Whereas in actual fact, that costs us a huge amount of money, and there's not that much that we can really do with it. So from a waste perspective, you know, shipping plastic bottles is just ridiculous. And Ireland has to ship it. We have the council then has to ship that down to mainland Scotland, and we get a gate price. It's not brilliant. Sometimes we make a profit, sometimes we don't. But in many ways, it really would be better, of course, if we didn't have the plastic bottle in the first place. People were reusing, or they were, you know, using whatever. And I just think it's an education thing for us there, very much about recycling is great, but it really is like the third or the fourth on the list. And obviously reduce is the first, and then reuse. And we're really, really keen to emphasize that. So I think at some point it'd be really good to have a chat about how we kind of get in with the schools a little bit and encourage them. And they have definitely moved on that, there's no doubt, but really encouraging stuff around reduce and reuse and repair, as well as recycle, because from a council perspective, a lot of the recycling, particularly because we, in lots of places, we can't collect mixed recyclates, it costs us a fortune and it's exceptionally heavy to deal with it. And yeah, it would be much better if we were not doing it. So, well, no, we should do it, but we should do less of it because we should be reusing.
Yeah.
So that was a long-winded way of saying I really appreciated the input, and it would be really good to maybe think about how we can get some of those other things higher up in the mix.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been part of conversations with George, who you might know at the council, at the planning partnership, to look at how we can get involved in a circular economy development within Orkney. And that's something, and I should also say that we're talking very closely with the Highlands and Islands Climate Hub as well, because they're active obviously in Orkney and Shetland. And we're very aware that for people looking in from the outside, there's lots of things happening in the climate space, and it's about being really clear about what we are doing and how we can then work with others to complement and where appropriate collaborate. So we are making sure that we're speaking to lots of different folk and being aware of where there are opportunities to act together.
Yeah, I mean, a follow-up, I mean, I think it's quite keen that it is important to say what we do and what we don't do as well, Hayley. I mean, there's a lot of actors, and the whole idea of this principle of the CRCs and is using those trusted local actors in the community as a centre to provide good information and trusted information, so we will get individual citizens to act. There's only one mode of doing it. We have yourself. We welcome when we're compiling the materials in particular, to make sure that we can use yourself and some of your colleagues to check over to get the best material out there. For a long time when we were pitching this, one of the things we used was a recycling example. It's that frustration. How do you have someone that really, really cares and spends all the time washing out their milk bottles, doing all the plastic milk bottles and everything, doing that, and then they pick up that fruit dish that's PET, it's one, they want to recycle it and they can't, and then they get frustrated. And at best you get inaction, and worse you get resentment. But it's getting those information about the why and the wherefores out there, so that people actually sort of feel. I think it's a really interesting thing. I think the longer I do this, and it's how much we are making decisions not on an irrational basis, but a non-rational basis, that people know but don't act, or equally people don't like to feel foolish and don't like to get caught out, and you know what I mean. And it's giving the people trusted information and feel that they can act. And I think we're only doing the bit using the CRCs and this network where we've got community organisations where there's already that trust built up. But there's equally roles, as Becky said, both for the climate action hubs and yourselves, particularly in the council centrally. That would be the thing I'd add to it as well.
Thanks, Mark. Matthew, Mike, and then Sandy will see if your mic's working. Matthew.
Yep, you hear me okay? Yeah, it's a fantastic network. It's a real asset to ICNZ, and yeah, great work that's been done by CES to get this up and running. I'm curious to know how we can show impact from this in terms of getting to net zero. I'd be interested to know. Sometimes a tricky one, so I thought I would chuck a tricky question at you.
Thanks, Matthew. I think it's hard to measure impact, but I think it in terms of measuring like tons of CO2 saved, but I think you can point already to what the communities are doing themselves, which is ultimately decarbonising. So it's maybe we need to find better ways of articulating the changes that we're making that goes beyond just measuring CO2.
It feels like we
Is
have to do the homework for someone trying to direct and steer ICNZ to answer that question. But no, absolutely, and I think there is, this is one where I hope we will be able to see by citizen action and things like that we can actually see the level of activity and that unblocking, where some of the ICNZ stuff is really quite hard to get good metrics on it. But I think it will be in a limited way. We only are talking about one aspect of one sector of the four sectors that ICNZ is dealing with. But yeah, I think we'll be able to evidence even the number of people who attended meetings, the people that have gone away that have acted on that, composting, from those point of view that come away and take active action from that. But yeah, but it's hard. It's hard for all of what we're doing here, and especially with this project, where this project isn't funded at a level where it can do it itself. It's there to enable others to do it, and how we then measure that in direct action across all the activities we're doing. Was that a politician's answer for you, Matthew?
No, that was good. Thank you. I'll let whoever's next jump in.
Mike, then Sandy, and then Anna.
Hi, yes. Unusual for me to be able to actually ask a question, because I don't really, curiously enough, although I'm at every meeting, I don't actually know what's been said in the meeting till I edit the video later. But anyway, just a quick aside though, Mark, if you don't need it anymore, could you stop sharing your screen?
I wondered about that. I left it in case people want to go backwards and forwards, but I can do that. Yeah. Cool.
The question that I had though was that I noticed, if I got it right, that there didn't seem to be very much involvement in mainland Orkney, particularly. I wondered if there was a reason for that.
We do have quite a few members, but in terms of the community resource centres, the kind of main one will be the Orkney Library and Archive, in that they have the reach of, everybody can be on the mainland can be a library member. But in terms of organisations, there are organisations who are members within the Orkney mainland. But I think it's an interesting point as well, because I think the Isles have development trusts who are very, very active about making things happen for their community, and they're the ones who've really jumped on board. I would say probably the majority of the organisations who are members are development trusts.
Yeah, I do sometimes wonder why we don't have similar organisations in the mainland parishes that they have in the Northern Isles, for example, because I know that those development trusts are very active and do a lot of good work, and we don't have the same opportunity. Like in Dearness, there isn't anything equivalent to a development trust, although we're probably very similar size.
I think there's a bigger question there and a bigger discussion about those anchor organisations and things. I think for this project, though, it's interesting. Shetland, if we look at Shetland, where we have a lot more on the mainland but removed, and you have like Hossick and Bicton, and for those point of view, they're actually all connected up, but they identify themselves more discreetly as taking action for their area. I think quite a lot on the mainland, we look to School Place, we look to central resources to do things. Dearness is almost an island, as we argue, and people write books about, but there's that tendency to look to School Place to provide answers where, I think some of that. But yeah, I'm a big fan, obviously, of building that both opportunity and responsibility within those more local areas, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. Sandy, then Anna.
Hi, can I just check you can hear me, because I've had to cobble together a mic. Great, thanks. Thanks for that, Mark. Becky's really interesting. And I had a question, which it's maybe a bit wider than iCAN's, but in the preamble, you talked about the value of community ownership of resource, and it's unquestionable. It can, bring huge benefits, but it's still a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the existing renewable energy infrastructure that's out there, that's in anything that we can call community ownership. How can we sort of, make this happen in a big way? Is it a question of more information, what iCANS is trying to do, or does it require something more fundamental altogether?
Oh, yeah, good question, Sandy. I mean, we're trying to change things, and I think everybody here probably knows that, what we're looking at is a systemic problem. I mean, we're doing what we can with what we've got where we are, but to make real change happen, we need system change and cultural change as well. And I think, we can do what we can do, but it definitely needs more fundamental change.
And just to check your question, do you mean how can we have more community ownership of energy?
Yeah.
Or this, because that's what I was just checking, because I think maybe not the ICAN side of it. I mean, in Orkney we do quite well. If you look at it, it's almost a quarter, which is interesting. I think, yeah, other islands less so. But I think there's a big opportunity happening, and you and I, there's a wider generational change happening on how the country is, and hopefully the world's going to benefit from resources that we all live in and work around, Sandy. And I think the key thing we've had, that those development trusts are organizations and agents for change and resilience that have been underpinned by the community energy, by the resource that gives them the certainty, the longevity, and that they have from this. And I think we're doing everything we can to recreate that model that's supported by other mechanisms we can't build out. And the market no longer exists, I would say, for doing lots of small turbines from that point of view, like wind. But as you and I were talking quite recently, the opportunity for securing local benefit, securing community benefit at a regional level, at the council level, how we embed that and give what we've learned. And we had a great 2 decades. We've shown how much collective citizen action coming together, anchor organizations and what they can achieve, and taking the best of that and saying, how do we resource and fund that? Because we invest in that, we build for the next 2 decades by doing the same thing.
Yeah, and as you say, perhaps acting like lighthouse communities and providing models that other people can follow. But yeah, thanks very much.
Thanks, Andy. Anna, then I've got one of my own. Anna, go.
Yeah, I was just wanting to ask, obviously you've got, seeing that one of the ICAN members is the Living Well hub at the Bray Youth Centre, which obviously is going to be our rural energy hub for Bray. It's just wondering, it would make sense for the Bray Rural Energy Hub to become a member of the ICAN network, but would there be an issue with 2 organizations based in the same building? Maybe it's a more detailed chat for offline, but I just wanted to mention it now because I realized we haven't, unless I fell asleep in that meeting, we've never talked about bringing these 2 things together.
I think, let's have a conversation, Anna, because that's something we've thought about. And yeah.
The Living Well Hub's a bit of a cheat, because the Living Well Hub isn't just in Bray, obviously. It's lovely Rita across Bresser and Bray and the other. So it was an opportunity to have a floating one that got us in a different number of different locations at a reasonably good price as well, Anna.
Oh, great. Oh, I didn't realize she moves around different places.
Yeah,
oh, okay, that's why she's only in the Bray Hub certain days. I wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, got you.
Okay, cool.
Thanks, Anna. I've got one, and there's a comment coming from James. It sounds really interesting, the stuff that's going on, and as you know, I'm quite keen to find a way to make the various things that are going on around the community visible to others, so that other people, because you all have these bright ideas, think somebody will do something about such and such, only to discover after several months that somebody is already doing something about it. You just didn't know about it, and you could have joined in with it, or could have put your shoulder to it. So I'm just keen to understand how, or what the plan is to make the outputs from this, or the collected wisdom, how that is intended to be made visible to others, so that they know there is something, that there is a track they can already follow, or indeed there is a path leading to a swamp, and they might want to take a deviation from that path before they fall into the swamp. And it's just that bit about what's the intention to capture and promote, and then make this stuff visible to others.
So the toolkit will capture a lot of what's happening within the network. The whole point of the toolkit is that it develops with the network, and there are case studies of activities that are happening. Part of what we'll also develop is a members directory, so you can see who's doing what where. How we promote that outside of the network, I think, is probably open to a discussion about how best to do that. But certainly we would be able to share case studies through ICNZ channels, and as I said, we are making sure that we're in dialogue with other organisations who are working in this space. So, the potential to kind of cross over and touch other, you know, be in touch with other networks as well, is there.
I think Becky's almost too polite to say it. This is shamelessly a resource created by a network for a network of community organizations. And we're going to have an online presence. We're capturing what the initial stuff we're populating with, Neil, just to start. It's whatever other people are doing and getting their learning. It's a collective endeavor. And even things, I mean, things like I'm passionate about, like what grows where, how many people have tried different types of raspberry across Orkney and how they've done, just capturing those bits of information through the community organizations and things like that, very much like we've done on the renewable energy side. But that is all, I think that's very solid, and all that sits within the ownership of those who are working with it, and it feeds in and it grows. And I think the issue is then how we interact with other parties, and we can offer value to other parties, and those bring something to the table to these communities that have put a lot of effort and real estate in building all this information up as well. But yeah, but that's part of what we develop, what we're developing going forward. But the stuff community for the community by the community will be embedded on an online resource that they have access to, and as one of the members and a part of the network. Yeah, so.
Good. Sounds really interesting. Okay. No, thanks for that. There were a couple of comments that have just come in. James, oops, sorry, scroll there, it's disappeared. James asked a question. No, several. Sorry. James saying we can have community ownership of energy efficiency, e.g., where can insulation bring the most benefit? That was an interesting point. Tate, if you want to come in on that or say something in person, feel free. If not, I'll move on. Nick, you had a point here. Do you want to just voice it? So that's Nick Blythe.
Yeah.
You're on mute if you are, Nick. Bottom left-hand corner if you can't find it. No, I'll voice it then. Nick was just saying, just to add to this question, we perhaps have community ownership / engagement on energy management also through to communities or households, brackets meter readings, smart meters, etc. Good question, question mark.
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, the problem is it's history now, but a really good example of energy efficiency when all the community development trusts were setting up and waiting to get the turbines built. We actually engaged and did the home insulation scheme and basically bought in bulk insulation, and almost all those communities actually went round and put standard insulation in everyone's houses up to building standards and beyond. And we had the opportunity to do that because working together collectively to do that. I think it's a lot more special this now, and it was still the big thing across, I would say, Orkney, Shetland and the Western Isles. I did see Michael Butler on here earlier. I mean, we're looking at really how to treat houses, the retrofit houses, and how do we tackle those? We need to get up to a basic standard of securing the envelope before we can have any impact. And how can we best work with, again, trusted local partners? And some of those are community anchor organisations, like Development Trust, but we also have Thor in Orkney, we have TIG in the Western Isles, these trusted local delivery partners that are out there to help delivery. They're all good examples of community owning and working with and acting in their energy systems of people, of individuals. And if you work together, you can have great impact for doing that. So I think that was a really positive thing. And I've forgotten my first point because I started with the second one, but that would have to be what it would be, Neil. Oh, it was, yeah, people talk about the smart meters. I'm almost a bit, we had a period of a decade in Orkney where the community, driven by a need to do something smart with their energy, looked at a lot of things that were innovative, how we could do better control and match locally to get value locally out of the energy in individual houses and things on meters, smart heating and things like that. I think that has to go around the turn again. We've been through the demonstration phase. We're almost picking over the bits, looking at what is deliverable and what's the next stages are going forward now. And that's reflected in other larger projects across Orkney and Western Isles as well.
Thanks. Well, Nick, I see you come on camera. Do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, very briefly, Neil. Thank you very much. It was I guess simply we you know, I hear a lot of people talk about quite often, you know, the household level and obviously the cost of living crisis as well, and the time of the cost of living crisis, and it's just quite interesting to sometimes think right down. Sometimes do things like smart meters almost. I think I've got a really good role to play, but then again, do people without smart meters there's that extra encouragement for people to say, well, you don't need a smart meter, you can do some very, very basic stuff yourself. I mean, I was quite amazed when I recently looked at an appliance in the place I was staying in, with a meter, or just did my own meter reading overnight on the fridge, and the old fridge was horrible. I mean, its consumption was awful, and it's prompted me to change the appliance. So that kind of thing about the cost of living crisis connection that comes into it all. So just think about those small things that everyone can do, and that they get sometimes a bit overshadowed and feel that, you know, you can't do anything unless you've got X, Y, or Z, and just to kind of like think of that very, very basic entry level for people. That's all I was making. Thank you.
Well, that's really good. Well, when we were doing the sort of innovation projects, we wanted to say, look, we're having an impact, and how do we engage the individuals? And we did use a third party. I can say now, because you can't get hold of them, the Effigy Engage system. It was a brilliant system that let people see the data. They could go back and look. I've still got one plugged in my house. It was a really powerful tool. And we've done quite a bit of activity using community organizations and trusted partners to carry on that work and supporting. I mean, Thor were one of the partners that went into areas of large challenge, multiple deprivation as well. And we're looking to see how we could support people to better feel they can have a bit of ownership and control over their own energy systems as well. Sadly, to some degree, that's off the market now, because everyone is putting all their eggs in a smart meter basket, I think, and it's not quite delivered yet. And we're very careful that OREF, as a wider question, have been engaging with Ofgem and things like this as well, is how do we get people to put in smart meters so we can use the utility of them, but at the same time not overpromise when there's known limitations and get into that negative spiral again of people, oh, it's not working, I don't get reception and all that. And how do we do that? And use the local trust, but to have local trust, you have to have good information. You have to, you have to be honest as well for that. But there is some initiatives going forward now, and we've got funding going in this next month on something that, across Orkney in the Western Isles to support some of that. Yeah.
Thanks.
Michael, did you want to say anything? But you turn your camera on now, so it's good. I'm trying to think what I was talking about, why I referenced you earlier, but yeah. No, okay, cool.
Keith, you found a button. Well done, mate. Right.
Can you hear me?
Yep, hearing you. A bit faint, but carry on.
Just a comment, really. I think most people know how they would like to decarbonise. The problem is they don't have the finances to do it. It's as simple as that, I think. But I think if you want to get to the grassroots, especially on the mainland of Orkney, I think you should go to the community councils, because they are manned by the grassroots people in Orkney. And they may well give you some further ideas that are worth considering. I mean, just one example that frustrates people, I think is what Hayley was talking about earlier on, is plastic garbage. When I put out a garbage bag every 2 weeks, there's nothing in it except plastic. And I find that extremely frustrating, but nobody seems to be doing anything about it. I wish you luck.
Thanks, Keith. I'm going to bring a couple of comments and then I'll bring Joel in. So Susan asked a question about, is there a link with the Levelling Up Fund for community energy projects?
Not at the moment, no. No, Levelling Up Fund in what sense? So.
Susan, did you want to come in on that? You're on mute at the moment, Susan. If you bottom left, I think it is.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, gotcha.
So I've got a bit of a sore throat, so I'm a bit croaky. Yeah, I just wondered if the Levelling Up money was being accessed for decarbonisation and possible community ownership projects. There's a bit of a pot of money sitting there. Certainly within Orkney, we got awarded an amount of money, and there's been meetings about what do we do with it, how do we allocate it, what do we use it for. So I just wondered if there's been a link between, I've just finished an archaeology and environmental science degree, and I'm actually on the Scotland committee for CIEEM. That's kind of why I'm here tonight. And I just wonder if we, looking at some of the buildings in Orkney, we could possibly repurpose them using planning legislation and levelling up money. But obviously what we want to do is make sure they're as green as possible with turf roofs and things like that. So I just wonder if there's a relationship between community energy and the council and the levelling up money that could enable some of these ideas.
So I think the levelling up money you're referring to there is the Towns Fund. Is that
Yes,
right?
yeah.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think they're actually connected, but if anybody knows, I think they may actually get stacked. So if you can find something, you might be able to. Well, I'm not sure the evaluation criteria has been
No, I was
worked.
scanning the screen, Neil, to see who was here. Yeah, because everyone was going to comment. The council at the moment are definitely leading on how that money is. They've set up a panel with representatives and out in consultation. Well, Ian's got his hand up, and Ian might be able to speak about it. I don't want to drop anyone in it, but he's nodding, so that's okay. They're going through a process of consulting and getting ideas on how they use that 20 million across Orkney. Yeah, we would certainly welcome it. But before I hand over the mic to Ian, I think we're doing a lot of work nationally, and both ourselves and sister organisations with DTAS and others as well, to see how we actually engage with the new government and some of their local energy plan and what they hope to do as well with the GB energy money, which I think is really interesting for actually underpinning the next generation of community energy. Susan, there's a really big opportunity there. And even some of the I always call it lost assets, some of the money that they're looking to see how they bring back, and how that's distributed. We've got a paper on a community wealth fund, a Scottish one based on sort of energy projects on that. So we're very keen on that. But I'll open Ian knows a lot more about the local information on the town fund, so you can speak to it.
Yeah, Neil, are you happy for me just to give a wee bit of an update as far as that's concerned? So the government has put up, although they've said that the £20 million is still there, they have given very little guidance as to what's going to happen with it and how it's going to be done. So the Towns Board, as is at the moment, is just a wee bit in abeyance or on hold until the government come out with some more information of how they're expecting that money to be spent, because previously it was called levelling up. They don't like that term anymore because that was a Conservative term. But equally, the criteria that were set out for the original funding, the government may well change some of that, and energy efficiency might feature in that, and certainly in a number of the projects that came back in the work that we did for the Towns Board, a number of them were about insulation across the whole island. So you just have to wait and see, and there'll be more information about it as we go forward.
Thanks, Ian. Hayley, your hand went up about the same time. Is it around this, or should I take Joel first?
Yeah, it is around this actually, and I mean Ian's actually said much of what I was going to say. I mean, I'm not involved from a work perspective with the Towns Board at all. It's not in my area, but just to say that pretty much what Ian has said, my understanding is it's obviously it's chaired by Stephen Hagan, so it's sort of separate from the council. It's actually stands quite separately, but it's kind of administratively supported by the council at the moment in this stage. But it isn't a council subcommittee or anything like that. It's very definitely different to that, and it is sort of, I think we're just waiting on more guidance. I think the good news is that we've had the confirmation that the funding is still there, which I think was a concern sort of post-July, where there was that sort of period where the budget and the review as to, looking at all of the commitments that had not been previously financially supported. But the good news is the money is still there. And I think there was something that came out fairly recently in the paper confirming that it has been agreed that it can be for projects that are across Orkney and not just specifically Kirkwall, which again was one of the sort of first discussions they were having. So I think it's watch this space, but I'm certain that there will be, as Ian has said, there's already been projects put forward which are around that kind of thing, but ultimately it'll be up for the board to decide what goes forward.
Thanks, Ian. Joel, you jump in, and then Sandy had made a comment, so maybe you want to voice it afterwards. Joel?
Oh, yeah, sure. Thanks, Neil. Just a very short, small comment really was about going back onto what success looks like for iCAN. I think the visibility thing, just highlighting what Neil, I think what Ian said earlier, is a really key thing. There are an amazing load of really good initiatives in Orkney. Just one that comes to mind, for example, like the Growing Project on Papa Westray and how that's run, providing kind of local food. And there are loads that I'm aware of. And I think that yeah, just actually making those visible, it's some sort of profile. You can see all these amazing kind of climate initiatives going on in a central place would be a massive success. For example, just to speak to Nick, as an example here, we're involved and starting a kind of a plastic recycling initiative, and have just got all of the equipment from North Ronaldsay, because unfortunately Transition North Ronaldsay is closed down, and now we've been transferred that. It's a new organisation, Turn 360, that's just been registered at the end of last year, and so there are projects going on out there to do with waste management and stuff, and so it's just I think it would be amazing just to have greater visibility of what's going on across, and not just in Orkney. Like, that connection with the other islands is so interesting, I think. So yeah, I'm just saying what's already been said, but saying I think that's just would be a massive success to have that increased visibility.
Yeah, just to say, Joel, I think, and not just iCAN and the work we're doing, I think the whole ICNZ has an opportunity to do that. We're just meant to be building facility. We're trying to focus on action that delivered and mediated through our community organizations. But at a personal level, we have the wider ICNZ team that are looking for those examples as well. And maybe they'll come and speak to OREF as well on this and other folk. Yeah.
Good idea. Okay. Sandy, do you want to jump in?
Okay, I did stick a couple of comments in, and one was actually about that, how do we measure impact from this? And Mark, you're very well aware, because it's your student Flora Robertson's actually working on metrics for community benefit, from metrics to measure community benefit from community renewable energy, and there may be something in there in that work to help us measure the impacts. And I was just musing as well about this ownership issue, and I guess one thing that we can be proud of is that we are communities that are taking ownership of the problem, instead of waiting for other people to try and solve it for us. So yeah, that's another side of ownership, isn't it?
Thanks, Sandy. Joe, your hand's still up, so I don't know if you want to come back in or something, or was that a legacy hand? It's well resolved. Did you want to come in again? Nope. You'll find the right button in a minute. It's all right. And just for people's information, in the chat, Becky's actually posted a paper about the Fair Energy Deal. So it's been spoken about earlier, so it's well worth a read, I think. So thank you for that. Okay. Any more for any more? No. Okay. I would be really grateful if we could do a little bit of audience participation now, because it's just a thought popped in. Oh, Sandy, did you want to come in there? No. Just out of curiosity, we're doing this obviously tonight online because of the weather forecast. Although ironically, it seems to be all right out there at the moment. Sod's law, isn't it? I'd just be curious to know how many people would have driven to the event. And out of those, how many people are driving electric vehicles or fossil fuel vehicles? So I'm just trying to get a feeling for what we've saved in terms of impact tonight by doing this online rather than anything else. So would you be good enough to put your cameras on and put your hand up if you would have driven? That's the first question. Right. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, go on.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah. Can you see me? Yeah.
10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I'm seeing 15 hands, 16 hands so far on the second screen. To keep your hands up, 16, 17. Okay, 17. Okay, and out of those, keep your hand up if you were driving an electric car. So 1, 2, 3. If I get more than 17, it's got really silly, this isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Right, okay. 13 out of 17 probably would have driven an EV. Okay, just out of curiosity. Thank you, Rashni. Right. So I'll just sum up then to say, somebody would have walked. Yes, fair point, Hayley. Yes, oh dear. Got to use the polling function. Those of you who know what a complete Luddite I am, the chance of us getting out of that alive, of me trying to use the polling function, is pretty close to zero. So thank you for the confidence. Right. So look, thanks, Rich, indeed for the presentation tonight. That was really interesting, and you know, more power to your elbow. As I was saying earlier, Orkney's a pretty special community. It does special things, and we shouldn't take that for granted. But if we can learn from what has gone on and what's gone on really well, and also from what hasn't worked so well, so that people don't have to fall down the same hole, both of those are very, very useful lessons. So it does sound really interesting, and the act of sharing this around sounds great. Really look forward to seeing how it all goes. The ICNZ website, no doubt, will link people out to the iCAN side of things, I'm quite sure, and there'll be information about this we'll put in the OREF newsletter, which will be out in 6 weeks or so's time. I am singularly ill prepared, because I can't remember what the next meeting is, but maybe Frances might remember. I'm putting her on the spot now. Was that the Robotarian one? Or was that something else? What's the next one?
Was it the local plan, maybe?
I think it might be. So I think we're getting a bit of an update from the local plan team as to where things are sitting, which sounds really interesting. And that, I think, will be the first Tuesday of February. And then following that, then the Robotarium. And those of you who don't understand what that means, it's basically doing experimental and demonstration work using robots and proving their usefulness in a variety of different ways. Sounds really exciting, and that's going to be at the in-person element of the Robert Rendell building, the presentation coming in online. So and I really do urge people to try and come along to these so we can have a bit of a chat over a cup of coffee and scheme and plan the next generation of what needs to be done. So I will say thank you indeed for everybody for coming along tonight, or not coming along, as the case may be, and you know, really just wish you well, and please do keep exchanging information. I think that's the real strength that Orkney's got, and the more of it we can do, the better it's going to be. So thanks for everybody, and good night. Bye.
Thanks, Dale.
Thanks, folks.